those who don't know, my name is Jordan Us. I'm the new community development manager here at Impact Corry. Thank you guys for. You're fine. Thank you so much for joining us here today on this beautiful day. We originally were hoping to be here last week, but we postponed with inclement weather, and I was a little worried last night checking the weather. But looks like we're going to be good, through our trail times today. No rain forecasted before noon. But this is session 2 of 4 educational trail workshops. Organized by Impact Corry to teach and guide trail development in the city of Corry to no cost to anybody. To my right here, is recognized trail expert Ron Steffey of Steffey Trail Connections. We held our first session here on April 9th. We talked about trail basics, and today is the second of 4 free educational workshops. Where we're at right now, 1050 Mead Avenue, is actually the site of a future park, pollinator garden, and trail spur that's currently being developed by Impact Corry. You guys will see some more information come out about this here in the near future. About July 1st, we'll have a grand opening of the first 800 feet of this trail spur, which will begin at the subway parking lot and come down here and follow these stakes where we park down over there. The trail spur will come into here and then connect to a pollinator-themed crosswalk that we are establishing on Mead Avenue. So basically to encourage people on the Corry Junction Greenway Trail to come further into the city of Corry and connect them to our gem, which is, the great Mead Park. And that way they can continue their trail hiking all the way through. And then this section of trail you see down here, we have some funding from DCNR. And we're looking for more funding, and we are hoping, we will be extending this trail further all the way to Elk Street, and you'll see that today as we go along the trail with Ron and talk about grubbing work and trail maintenance. So we will extend it to Elk Street through a DCNR grant, and then after that, if you can imagine, we are working on acquiring the right-of-ways and property acquisitions to extend that trail even further into the downtown area. I know a lot of people hear Impact Corry and they think splash pad. And yes, eventually we will we will connect, these trails into that park, the trails and rails park that are being, planned for downtown. So the whole goal is to create these new trails and connect all of our great green spaces here in the city of Corry and get people out and moving and more active. But it all starts with trail maintenance and trail creation, which is why we're here today. So a little bit about Ron Steffey, if you will entertain me. Ron Steffey is a Penn State University graduate, bachelor's degree in mining engineering. He was the former executive director of the Allegheny Valley Land Trust for almost 15 years. Since 2018, he's been the principal consultant for Steffey Trail Connections, which provides trail consulting for trail owners, managers, and advocates to increase trail user enjoyment while reducing construction and maintenance costs. So as a nonprofit, we love to hear that. Ron has received numerous awards throughout his career, including a 2019 Dominion, Pennsylvania Environmental Lifetime Achievement Environmental Award. He is a PA Wallace Champion Outstanding Leader, 2012 Senate of Pennsylvania Document of Congratulations for, and I quote, shining example of community spirit, and an American Trails 2008 Pennsylvania Trail Advocate Award. He actually, Armstrong County Commissioners, I saw this and I loved this, proclaimed February 15, 2018 as Ron Steffey Day to celebrate him transforming the inactive railroads to quality recreation trails, which I just thought was so perfect because here's a formal rail bed that we are doing just that with Ron Steffey. Currently, he's the chairman of the Pennsylvania DCNR Trail Advisory Committee and past president of the Erie to Pittsburgh Trail Alliance. He has partnered with the Oil Region Alliance to advance multiple trail projects in Crawford, Erie, Venango, and Clarion counties, and has successfully rejuvenated the Clear Lake Authority to leverage its volunteer sweat equity into over $1 million for the East Branch Trail projects, which we also love to hear that. We're trying to do the same thing with our sweat equity. So, before I turn over to Ron, just a couple of more things. Like I said, this is session 2 of 4. So if you guys want to mark your calendars, our third one will be Saturday, May 21st from 10 a.m. to noon at the Tri-County Snow Blazers facility. For anybody who doesn't know where that is, it's out on Scioto Road, specifically 18133 Scioto Road. But if you just...
Actually, it'd be a lot easier to just go to the Hereford Road parking lot because they're going to bring their tractor up.
Oh, perfect.
Remember, I think I sent that to you.
Oh yeah, yesterday. Yep, and I prepared these comments before that. So yes, so Hereford Road property would be a great place to park. We'll be sending more information out about that this week. And then our last one,
What was the date on that?
Saturday, May 21st, be 10 a.m. to noon. Yep, week from today, 1 week from today. And then the last one, the final one, will be Thursday, May 26th, 10 a.m. to 12:30. It is only a 2-hour workshop, but Parkside at Corry, which is helping provide funding for this trail workshop, is going to be serving us lunch. That'll be the last half hour. We'll be meeting at Parkside at Corry, 959 Shamrock Lane, and there will also be more information released about that here in the coming future. All workshops are free, no RSVP is needed to attend, And as you guys can see with Chuck video meeting right now, and I'll be videoing later, and that's why we had you sign these releases. We're videotaping every workshop, and we're creating videos so they can be shared for years to come. So anybody who wasn't able to be here in person, we can use these free educational trail workshops to share these videos and help train further more people who are interested in joining our efforts. So I believe that is it. Oh, also I just wanted to mention that this isn't funded by We Can Serve PA and the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Pennsylvania Recreation Trails Program, which is funded through the through the Federal Highway Administration. Also through Impact Corry and Parkside at Corry have also had some matching funds to make this trail workshop possible. So we just want to make sure we recognize our volunteers. So I'm sure you're bored of listening to me. We want to listen to Ron, but real quick, just want to go over a quick safety lesson for anybody who's using the loppers today. We don't want anybody to cut their fingers. So obviously this is the handle, this is the blade. When we're walking with the loppers, we want to make sure we tuck that blade underneath our arm and have the handle sticking out so we're not stabbing anybody. When we hand them off to somebody, they suggest holding the blade side, right by the bottom of the handles and hand it off. When we're not using them, obviously make sure the blade is pointing off the trail, not near it, so we don't have anybody walking by, clipping themselves. And shovels, I don't have one for visual, I should have grabbed one, but I think it kind of goes without saying. We don't want anybody to throw out their back today, so make sure when we're shoveling, put that pressure down, slide that hand down, lift with the knees, not the back. We don't want anybody throwing out their back, today. I'm sure we could get the fire department down here on the trail, but we don't want to do that yet. So make sure you're taking any safety precautions needed today. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ron Steffey. It looks like we have a late comer. Wonderful. We have another participant. So thank you all again for being here. And Ron, take it away.
Okay. Real quick, sometimes whenever people exaggerate what I've done, and I think the one thing I've done is becoming a trail expert, and the only way I became a trail expert is by doing so many things wrong, and finding out what works and what doesn't work. So part of the reason why I started Steffey Trail Connection was to help people so they didn't have to make the mistakes I did and try to show some of the things that work and some of the things that don't work. So if you have any questions on, Ron, why are we doing this? Don't be afraid to ask, because I think not as important as doing the job is understanding why we're trying to do it, and what we're trying to do is part of it. So what we'll do is we're going to probably concentrate more on the vegetation that's on down here by towards Bear Creek. And so if you have any questions on, Ron, why are we doing this? Don't be afraid to ask, because I think not as important as doing the job is understanding why we're trying to do it, and what we're trying to do is part of it. So what we'll do is we're going to probably concentrate more on the vegetation that's on down here by towards Bear Creek. And what we'll be doing is cutting down some small saplings and shrubs and different things, just preparing it so a contractor can come in here and see more of what he has, and he'll be more efficient. Plus, what we're doing is a match for grant. We're changing sweat equity into dollars, so that I've gotten millions of dollars by doing that with volunteers, by using the volunteers. Right now it's almost $25 an hour that you can account for every hour that a volunteer is doing work on the trail. So that starts to add up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, my time doesn't count. It gets paid by others, so I'm not a volunteer. So let's go real quick by, if we had 10 people in the 2 hours, we're going to have $500 of match. And some of the matches just aren't 1-to-1, they're 1-to-4. So if it was one of those 1-to-4, now all of a sudden you have $1,000. It's a match. So these workshops are really great to be able to get volunteers engaged, but part of it is just being able to bring more dollars to Corry and to the trails to be able to accomplish more. So what we're going to do is, I said, some small trees and saplings. So I have some loppers over here. Some people can be cutting, some people can be dragging and taking the material that's going to be this was like Mosquito Boulevard. And I think with what Impact Corry has already done through here, that it's going to greatly reduce the mosquitoes. And in the water up there on the other side of my truckway, there's lots of tadpoles. So one of the ways to discourage mosquitoes is for frogs to eat their eggs and just have less of them. So it's somewhat working with nature and trying to figure out what can we do to make point out this bush here. And I'm pretty sure that most of it is 9-bark, but it could be honeysuckle. But I'm pointing it out, number one, as you can see, there's all that plant growing all around. So for those that have shorts and that, don't work in these areas, so you don't get the itches. And I want to also point out that this shrub, although mostly I'd be removing it, but right now it's growing, it's getting its sunlight in the morning. So it's just growing in that direction and away from the trail. So it's providing a job, it's stabilizing the bank, and plus it's giving a little bit of a barrier between here and the adjacent landowners. So for right now, we'll leave something such as that. Now down here, as we get closer to this house, we're not going to have as many options, but what we'll do is try to get some kind of shrubbery growing at places so that there is a little bit of privacy. And here's some of the sumacs. You can see these may be too big for a lot of people to want to tackle. So only tackle what you feel comfortable to do. And you'll see my shovel is on down there in the ground. We'll walk down there and get started. What we want to do is sort of go from shoulder to shoulder. And what I mean is, like right here's the shoulder, and much like a shoulder on here. We want to clear that because we're going to try to use this mostly for the trail. Plus, if you look at about 4 feet for today, we're going to try to go about 4 feet off the shoulder and just clear a path going up along here. Now, some of these trees we're going to leave, but what we want to do is start to get it that we're controlling the vegetation. It's not going to grow over. Part of a big thing of what I think trails need to be is not only enjoyed, but maintained so people can enjoy them more. So how do you make it easy to maintain? Is make the mowing easier and everything else. So if you have thorny blackberry bush like this, and it starts to grow this way, and you're mowing, and all of a sudden you could get
scratched.
Right. So with some of these that are like this, whatever we cut, if we can cut as close to the ground as possible. And if you get something like this, we may want to cut it once up here so that you're just dealing with that lower part as we're getting down lower. And again, this tree can, it's only going to grow so high. We have that one there, so that one could be removed. But the other thing is, where are we going to put the material? So what I want to do right now is just make a place. Let me put my gloves on. As I said, I wear gloves all the time. When I worked in the mines, we had to wear gloves. And I got in the habit of just wearing gloves, and it does make a difference. So say with this right here, want to see what is down there at the bottom. Get nice and even. Put it back on the cutter as much as possible. And what we're going to do is just start a pile right in here. So what we'll do is we can work, and people can work on this side, and some work this way, and some work that way. And then over on that side also, we can have people work in each direction. But we can have people that are dragging and bringing the material to here. Now this starts to get pretty big to be able to cut. And I wouldn't cut anything bigger than that with the loppers. And we're not going to throw it the whole way down. This is an area where we have that invasive that's growing, and it's getting lots of sunlight. So we're going to be covering it up some now to start with. And with these joggers, you don't want to touch the joggers, don't. I'd rather you get more stuff cut than bleed and leave, so I want to keep you here. But you can see right here we've cleared one place out where we can be throwing a lot of material. If it gets to be too much, then we'll clear out another place that we can throw material. It never bothers me. If you chip, you can chip and put stuff here, but it's all organic material, and I don't like to burn. But if you get a pile here, you got a habitat for rabbits and birds and different things. And if I was over next to that tree there with that branch coming out, you can cut the branches off, get them as close to the trunk as possible. I cut that one the wrong way, that the blade should start at the bottom and cut up so it doesn't tear like that. Again, we have a bigger room to do this, and work at your own pace. Make sure you're safe. Don't drop anything on anyone else.
You don't want any of this debris pulled out.
No, we should be able to, if we're cutting everything low enough, well, they'll probably come in here with the bulldozers. What we're trying to do is open this up so that the bulldozers can be.
Okay.
Now, this right here is a dogwood red stem, and it's a nice bush. In fact, you could take that, stick it in the ground where it's wet. They like wet feet, so I'm surprised that they're growing up here. But this is something that can say that we had more done in the future. We could be sticking this in the ground and actually establishing like a hedgerow going along there that you don't need to trim, and a little bit of a privacy.
What did you call that again?
This is a red stem dogwood. Let me see if I can. It really is a bright red in the winter time. Transpiring. You'll see a lot of that where you walk across from your park on the left-hand side as you're walking. There's a lot of this. In fact, I was looking at, do we want to save some of these and be able to plant them? But there's lots there, and it's probably better to do it in the fall where they'll start to root and go. So we can spread out. There's some tools if you have any questions.
Oh.
Stuff down and just keep cutting. So if you go past and you get tired of cutting and you want to carry, why, there's always my stuff. Anything else sort of growing out here, it's going to just always be in the way of the trail.
What? Sorry.
Look at the difference here. Look at something that seemed very narrow. Now look at the width that you have to work with. And this side can even go a little bit wider. And that's, I want to point out some things that, you know, my concern is how do we get established sort of a screening here so people aren't seeing down on there. But what we cleared out on this side is going to help this side. And as we prune some of these branches, this is going to get more sunlight and it's going to fill it a little bit more. So it'll somewhat naturally provide a little bit more of a screening. Now, a lot of this work I mostly don't do as much in May. April, we just had horrible weather and we got delayed several times. But what we're doing today is, I think, a good job task to be able to do from the end of October to the end of April. It's cooler, it doesn't get as hot out, you don't have the leaves to mess with. We didn't have problems with mosquitoes today, You can see there are some bees going around. So it is nicer to do in the cooler weather. And I found out that as for me today, I take breaks once in a while. In the winter time, you keep working because you'll get cold if you don't keep working. So that's an incentive to do some more work also. One of the things that I try to establish along all the trails that I work on is try to get a high canopy over top of the trail. Number one, as most of you are smart enough, I'm standing in the sunlight, but you're in the shade. And the trail users like to do the same thing. Be in the shade, it can be cool, it's just more comfortable and more of an incentive to go out and use a trail if it is in the shade. Number two, as you can see right here, vegetation doesn't grow as much underneath where it's underneath tree leaves and that. So that helps in the maintenance, reduces the maintenance. You don't have to mow as much, you don't have as much problems with erosion, water, with drainage, and it's just a benefit. So I have this pole saw that I got a couple years ago. It's not that expensive, and it runs by battery. So the advantages of it is it's somewhat cheaper, lighter, but people can't hurt themselves because they can't really tackle big trees in that. So it's good for the small branches. You can see it has, I think they're like 2 foot or maybe 30-inch extensions. And I've got 2 more extensions that I can put on and go higher and higher. But since it runs by battery and it's DC, why the more you put on, the less energy that's already used because there's more resistance. I won't get into volts equals amps times resistance and all that stuff. Who really cares? So what I'm going to do is to show the trimming of the branches, and I'll do this tree here because eventually it'll go out. This isn't the best time to trim because things aren't coming out and there'll be more sap. It is nice to do it when it's in the fall or winter, whenever it's dormant. But since this tree will come down eventually, I'll practice somewhat. And a lot of people would say, well, this branch is okay. It's not going to be much of a problem. But by the end of summertime, it may have enough weight on it that it's starting to be down around there. If you're the person that's mowing and you have a canopy on top, why, that's just something else that you're going to hit. So I always try to aim for a 20-foot high canopy. I seldom get it, but it's something that if you get up to that 20-foot canopy, stuff doesn't grow inside of that canopy as much, and you're just done for 5, 10, 12 years. You don't have to come back and do that. And while I'm mentioning that, I also see, and I didn't say it today, so thank you for that. A lot of people, whenever they're pruning, they may prune this right here because it's coming out in the trail. And if you prune it right there, what you end up getting is you'll get 2 more, and the next time you come, you have to prune 2 instead of 1. So cutting it back to the base, cutting it back to the trunk, cutting it back to the ground is really beneficial. And you only have to do it, you don't have to do it every year, that it's only so many years. So I mostly have a hard hat and a screen and earplugs on, but I'm not going to pick out the big branches here to do. So I'll just show you what this does. And the other thing is, whenever you're cutting, it is a lot quieter, except when you're cutting, you don't have that motor running. I try to always undercut, then cut, and then if I have to come back and cut it more. But it's a quick, easy thing to do. Like I said, it's small enough that you don't get too many problems with it. And what I've used it is with a monoflora rose. Sometimes you just can't get in at it, and this is a good thing that you can always stick in and be able to cut that monoflora rose. And I've even used this to push it away that you don't have to pick it. So if organizations have people trained to use something like this, I encourage it. That it does, and for trails, it does come in very handy. So you see me cut more, I guess cutting more of them down really doesn't, you want more cut to see?
Yeah.
You wanna trim this?
What about this one?
Just enough for it to swing, depends on how tired my arms are.
Oh,
and how
okay.
far.
Okay.
But try to get it that it doesn't move, but a little bit so it doesn't rip and come down. And this is how I've used probation a lot, and this is how I can cut that into another piece too. Lots of times I'll go down and I'll just take the lower branches. Then I'll go back and take higher branches and just keep working back and forth, so I'm not trying to crawl over top of stuff. Always trying to keep my walkway clean, and people can just keep throwing off and keep going higher and higher. So, let me just cut this up so it can be thrown. So a lot of people may say, well, that looks ugly where we put the branches and that. We could have thrown it over the
Let me put my gloves on this
trail a little bit more, but they'll move and they can get pushed out. So I look at what do you have available, and what's your goal? And the goal is to get the trail here. So you can see someone coming down here can see a lot better on running a bulldozer or a backhoe and see what they've got. These can be pushed off. And yeah, they may look ugly for a year, but it'll disappear. And you can do more work on that and dispose of it. But why not use the energy to really go here? It doesn't matter what you do over there. This is your main thing. So by the time this has limestone on, you won't notice that pile over there at all. In fact, it may be that you have more favorable things that are growing, that everything was pretty small, and it'll, over a couple years' time, it'll decompose. So it's like putting fertilizer over there, except it's long term. It'll take it a while to go. So any questions on things today? Was it worth your time to come out and do and see, and can you help others explain what to do? I try to give my philosophy, but I understand it's my philosophy, and as my wife says, I'm not always right. You can see where I'm coming from, and you don't have to agree with me, but just think, well, he said this, but maybe this is what's we should be doing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just so you're trying to make all your moves count, and And the goal is to be able to have a trail going down through here.
When you say undercut, what does that mean? When you're undercutting something?
Well, I'll just show you.
Perfect.
Look right here. There's my undercut. Are you able to see it there?
Yep.
Make it a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just allows that branch, it's sort of scored and it'll fall out right there. And if I just cut from the top, it may pinch the saw there, number one. Number two, it may, you know, how it'll take the bark and it'll just pull that bark down and not be good for the tree.
Okay,
And,
so it's a safety precaution, but also helping to keep the tools in working order then.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And the efficiency, if your pole's saw stuck in the tree, you're not cutting anything. So,
It's true.
it keeps everything. And that's lots of people try to say, well, I don't like to do that step. Well, I found out from having my pole stuck 15 feet up in the air why it's easier to undercut when you can. I'm doing things closer, and lots of times how much I have on this depends on how high I'm going, because I always want to be away from it so that it's falling not on top of me. I try to have if it's something straight up that it could fall on me, that's when I give the saw to someone else. And let them.
You talked about a 20-foot canopy. Is that the standard?
Well, that's my standard. There is no standard. So many of these things that a lot of, if you look at a lot of books, they may say 8 to 10 feet. Well, that's nice for that year, but then 2 years later you may be coming back and just look up through there with all those branches. That imagine a year's growth on them and more leaves and just how much they bend down. So you take care of the first ones and then your higher ones just start to bow down more. But again, it's sort of how we were trimming here. It's nice to get here and get to the shoulder, and then you can extend out. Get what you need to start. Maybe 1 year you're doing less, but then the next year you're coming through and you get a little bit higher. Now, part of my 20-foot height is that we did a lot of, our trails were pretty close to limestone quarries. So we would get the limestone trucked from the quarry right to the trail, and we'd tailgate it. We'd work with the quarry, so the day that they were actually crushing the stone was the day that we were getting it, because it's real dry then. Think of sand on a beach. But with it nice and dry, they'd have the tailgate and they'd have it chained so it's only open that far, and it'd be a real nice pour going through there. But if it's wet and that, it clumps up and it may stop. It's like building a sand castle that it just holds together. So we'd tailgate right out of the trucks, and they'd be 23-ton trucks. They'd hold 23 tons of stone, and they would go up 20 feet high. So that sort of made my standard, so those trucks could come and put their beds up in the air and just go. That made them happier. They became very helpful and did good jobs on doing it. We did about 30 miles of trail, but then that's how I stumbled into it, that, hey, we didn't have to go back and do anything. This has been 12 years ago, and no one's had to go back on that section of trail to do any trimming since then. So, you know, it's much like I said, it's not that I'm an expert, that I'm smart, it's that I made enough mistakes or stumbled into things that actually work, and that's what I tried to...
We're benefiting from your mistakes.
Yeah. Another thing we found out was we were doing some trimming on in a section that had a lot of beavers along the Allegheny River, and they didn't build any dams across the river, but it was deep enough, and they were bank beavers, and they'd come up and chew. But what we did was clearing up along here made the trees sort of lopsided towards the river. So anytime the beavers came and they chewed, the trees always fell away from the tree, and on the hillside we actually trimmed back further, so they didn't touch as many trees. But it was younger trees on on the riverbank. But this right here with the root system, if you see as I step on this, see how it's moving and it comes into here? So whenever I sort of see a root system like that, I may leave more of something here. So whenever they come down here with a bulldozer, they'll actually catch that and actually bring this up, or it at least tells them, well, there's something more here with a backhoe or something when they come and get it out. So it's sort of something you don't have to necessarily leave a note, that as they tear that out, it'll take more of the root system out. And you can see with some of these trees you're going to lose just because you're going to be messing with the leaves. And it's just not with the dozer. Even if you left those there, you put limestone on top, the roots may not breathe as much. Eventually the trees will die anyhow, but the beavers will probably take care of these trees before. But look in those trees, most of those trees there that's on the flat will be cut down. But now look how much easier it will be for people to come in and cut those trees down. So everything's sort of a cycle. How can you do some things that you have to do? What order do you want to do it in so that it makes it easier for everybody? And there's a great example of how whoever cuts those down, it's much more accessible.
Cool.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully this was helpful. And you know, I'm going to have to get my mileage down for the Erie to Pittsburgh Trail. It only goes 2 blocks from my house. So, you know, my goal is one of these years with the workshop that I leave the day or 2 days or 3 days or a month before home, and I can pedal the whole way up to here. No, I have an e-bike, so I'll cheat.
So you can cheat.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Thank you for your help. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you for your help.
You've helped me, and it's descending a good bit. But one of the things we're going to do, but you did such a good job down there, I figured why bring you up to here and show you something different. But there's an inlet here and an outlet over on that side that I showed some of you. And we walked past here at least a dozen times and we never saw this until we were getting a lot of water moving up there, and we were wondering where the water was going, and we thought it was just disappearing, and some of it was. But if you look at the bottom, you can see there's a lot of rocks and debris and different things. So what we were going to do was actually, someone had thrown a lot of concrete and stone there. So we're going to build what's called a head wall around this and just stabilize the slopes. So when it becomes saturated with water, it just doesn't slough down in, and it sort of regulates coming into here. And about 6 feet away, we were going to make a rock dam. What the rock dam does is it allows the water to pass through the cracks in between the rocks, but it holds a lot of the debris and the sediment so that it doesn't come down here and plug the drain. Instead, it'll plug there where you can easily clean as opposed to be here. So that's probably one of the things that we'll do, is build a couple rock dams up through here, and it'll just keep purifying the water a little bit, taking some of the sediment out and the debris out, and what goes into the pipe will be that much cleaner. And again, the work to do the rock dam isn't that much more, and it can be part of your erosion and sediment plan whenever you're developing this. But then you can leave it in, and it just is part of the maintenance, that at those rock dams on the upstream side of it is what'll need cleaned out. Instead of cleaning out the whole thing or right by the pipe, you're controlling more of where it can be cleaned. If you get a real hard storm coming down here, you have enough velocity of water, it'll pick up all that dry dirt and start to take it down there. And again, if you have those rock dams every so often, it'll make it that you have a little pull, and you need velocity to be able to have the sediment stay suspended. Once it hits that pull, the velocity drops, and a lot of it will suspend out of the water. So, since they put the drainage in and reestablished this, that this is getting smaller and smaller. But I never think that you're going to replace it or get all the water out. For several reasons. There's the sheds there that's the water's not going to soak in anywhere up there or off of Route 6 or a lot of the parking areas up there. And there's a lot of clay in there, so that clay is like a sponge. It just sort of soaks it, and the rainwater doesn't go down through it, but yet it soaks it. And the water that's coming down this way was soaking it also. So now with them moving it down through here, it looks like it's getting smaller and smaller, but I still think that you need to have some kind of little wetland or water here, that you have the tadpoles and frogs, so that you have something that eats the mosquitoes. So you don't have one spot where they're standing water for 2 weeks and then all of a sudden you have a lot of mosquitoes. Try to use nature so it can benefit you. And again, there's a lot of the red stem dogwoods up through there, and you see the willows that are growing through there too in the wet area. So I think this is an area where working with nature can benefit everyone. Do you have anything to add, Marty?
The fact that there's all those tadpoles in there and we
Oh,
heard
yeah.
frogs,
Yeah, there was
that's a good thing.
right in front of my truck where this gravel ends, there was hundreds of tadpoles.
Really?
Yeah. So that tells me that frogs wanna be here, and so.
And that's in the water. Oh yeah.
So this is going to be a tadpole, butterfly, bee. I doubt if you get muskies growing in here. But yeah, that this can be here, and you can always have sticks on one side so they have a habitat to somewhat hide. But you know, it's not a golf course, so don't make it like one, and use
Right.
nature as much as possible.
So
Naturally,
it would
I'd-
just take a couple scoops out with a, is it a backhoe? Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
And make it just a tad bit.
yeah.
for
And you
the
may have to.
tadpoles.
So it
You-
doesn't dry up.
You may have to put a little bit of rock in there so everything doesn't slough in, that it's much like what we're talking about.